All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Pataskala City Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to order. Today is Monday, March 11th. The time now is 6:30. I'd ask that you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ask Ms. Paxton to call the roll, please.
Bruce Ashcraft. Alan Howe.
Here.
Chad McKittrick.
Here.
Rob Platt.
Here.
TJ Rotoback. Here.
The record will reflect that Mr. Ashcraft is presently absent. He let us know that he may be able to attend later, so we'll see if that works out. Welcome to all of you that have come out tonight. Based on our last meeting, I'm going to make an assumption that a lot of you are here for the number 4A on our agenda. You'll see that there's been a request for it to remain tabled. Generally, this board honors those requests simply because sorry if you can't hear me, simply because not only you as those giving evidence and testimony, but the applicant has the right obviously to give evidence and testimony and to hear that and to respond to it. So my understanding from staff is that we've received a request from the applicant for it to remain tabled. Do we have an idea when they intend to come back to this board or any kind of time frame schedule that they have in mind?
They did not indicate a time frame, so it could be April. However, I know from the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, they've been required to do a traffic study. Could probably take about 30 days. So more than likely, it would be May. But any time they do come back and it's confirmed they wish to move forward, we'll be sure to send out notice to everybody, as we always do.
Okay, we've had this before, so you all know when an applicant requests something to remain tabled. We've done it one of two ways: either honor that request straight out, as I said earlier, but if it becomes I guess no better way to put it, a nuisance and an inconvenience to where we're always having this request come up at different meetings, then we have opened it up to testimony, although that just makes it difficult then if any application, this one or any others, were to go to court. So I think I'm not in favor of tabling applications indefinitely. I'm certain that at the last meeting we tabled this application date specific to come back tonight. If Scott, if you're telling us it might be 30, 60 days or so, if they've got a couple things to work out before they come to us, I would recommend that this board honor that request to table it, but I would not want it to go past, let's say, June. This is March, April, May, June. That'd be 90 days. We could then revisit it, but if we tabled it until no longer, then the applicant can come back before that, and you could send out your notices accordingly. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That's my thoughts on it. I realize a lot of you have come probably to hear it or maybe even present evidence and testimony. There's a little bit of a concern with that, though. So I think that my suggestion to the board would because it was tabled date specific to this evening, take it off the table, retable it as I suggested to no later than the June meeting, and then I would ask you all to stay in contact with staff or the city website. Regardless, you'll receive notice though of when it is to come back to us. That's correct?
That's correct.
That's my recommendation to the board. Are there any thoughts on it? Okay.
I would agree with that plan. I know this would disappoint some folks in the audience who would want to be heard tonight, but simply for keeping the record and allowing the other side an opportunity to be heard and hear questions and concerns in their suggest not taking any testimony today.
Okay. I would agree with that. Any other thoughts from the board?
No.
So I'm gonna entertain a motion to remove variance application VA-19-000002 from the table. Is there a motion to do so?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Platt?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Ms. Rotobeck?
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick?
Yes.
Okay, the application before us, as I stated earlier, as Mr. McKittrick stated, I think the best thing would be to table it until no later than the June meeting. That would give the applicant the ability to come sooner than that, but at the very latest, it would be June. And then at this time, the board could decide if we want to entertain any further tabling, if there was a request to do so. So I would move to table variance application VA-19-0002 until at the latest time, the June meeting of this board. Is there a second?
I second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
No.
Roll call, please.
Mr. McKittrick?
Yes.
Ms. Rotobeck?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Platt?
Yes. All right, so this application will stay tabled. If you're here for that tonight, you do have our apologies, but we do have to make sure this is done correctly and the record stays straight for it. I would encourage all of you that have evidence and testimony and interest in this application to stay in contact with staff or the website or however it is. Chat with Miss Lisa if you wish to. Tomorrow, give her a call. But regardless, you will be notified of the next meeting when it will take place. Correct?
That's correct.
Thank you all. You don't have to stay tonight. You're welcome to, but
Thank you for coming out.
Take it
We
forward.
appreciate it. I think they're gonna be surprised how much I'm like, what are these people?
okay. So we'll move on the agenda. We have 4B. This is a conditional use application, CU-18-005. There's been a request to remove this from the table. If I'm correct, this is one that we tabled a couple meetings ago, and the applicant is now ready to come back. Is there a motion to remove it from the table?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Rotobeck?
Yes.
Mr. Platt?
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
We now have conditional use application CU-18-005 in front of us. Staff, if you please give us your report.
Thank you, Mr. Platt. Like I said, this is CU 18005. The applicant here is Mr. Brett Hatcher, Mr. Corey Bonda, Tasco Storage LLC. Location for this is an unimproved property off of Summit Road. Parcel identification number's up there. Acreage is at 12.25 and it is currently zoned local business. The applicant's requesting a conditional use pursuant to section 1247-0422 to allow for the expansion of an existing storage facility onto an adjoining lot. Take a look at the area map here. You can see the parcel outlined in yellow. Has frontage here onto Summit Road, with the existing storage facility being here on the north, frontage on the East Broad Street. Just a quick summary of the property itself. Like we said, it's 12.25 acres with approximately 280 feet of frontage on the Summit Road Southwest. Current zoning is LB for local business. And also the adjoining existing storage facility is located at two separate parcels. The first one being 14135 and the second being 14067, both of those on East Broad Street. And that area comes up to 2.998 acres total. Take a look here. We can see the existing conditions on the lot, again outlined in yellow, with the frontage on the Summit Street here. And we do have some vegetated area back here on the eastern about third of the lot. So as far as the existing storage facility goes, there's about 270 feet of frontage on the East Broad Street. There are 7 existing storage structures of varying sizes. a 2,100 square foot single-family home that was built in 1950, in addition to several parking spaces for RVs and trailers. There are 2 access points on East Broad Street, and the current zoning for those 2 parcels is GB for general business. And again, here we can take a look at the existing layout for those 2 parcels on East Broad Street. See the existing storage facilities here. The 2,100 square foot house is up here in the corner, and several parking spaces for RVs and trailers on the eastern side. So the applicant's proposing to expand this storage facility onto the adjoining lot with frontage on the Summit Road. So section 1247-04, part 22, the use lessers of mini warehouses and self-storage units, which is NAICS code 531130, is a conditional use in the LB local business district. The existing facility is zoned GB, in which it is a permitted use. So the current addition, or excuse me, the proposed addition would be phase 2, with the existing on East Broad Street being phase 1. Future expansions are being considered in phases 3 and 4, and the time frame for those is given by the applicant to be about 2 to 3 years. If we take a look here, we can look at the proposed site plan, with the existing structure being here on the north side, the proposed phase 2 right here in the middle, with a phase 3 down here in the south, and phase 2 over here to the west on Summit Street. So as part of this, we've come up with a quick general summary of the proposed phase 2. There are to be 4 buildings, not to exceed 35 feet in height, ranging anywhere from 7,600 square feet to 13,300 square feet. An additional 136,450 square feet of additional paved surface is proposed, with 76 outdoor parking spaces and a size of 12 by 36 feet. 4 pole lights for mount for the outdoor parking area, with 60 to 100 watt LED bulbs, fully shielded to prevent glare onto adjoining properties. Take a look here at a closer in view of the proposed phase 2. You can see the 4 storage buildings here, and the 76 outdoor parking spaces located here, and there will be proposed pole lights at either ends of these parking aisles here. Landscaping is proposed of the L4 type along the northern property line where it borders the existing residential properties, and about 300 feet along the eastern side of the proposed phase 2. The L4 landscaping type is a continuous 6-foot high wall or fence screen with 1 tree per 30 feet and an additional 4 high shrubs per every 30 feet. L3 landscaping is proposed between phase 2 and the existing church to the south, and also along phase 2 about 500 feet off the frontage of Summit Road Southwest. And L3 landscaping consists of a continuous 6-foot high shrub screening with 1 tree per 30 feet. In addition to this, the applicant is proposing to install a black chain link fence behind the required landscaping for security purposes. The applicant is also proposing to retain existing vegetation in future phase 3 as screening to the south. Access to this parcel is to be through the existing phase 1 and also 1 construction entrance onto Summit Road. And upon completion of construction, that will become an emergency access route and will be gated at the entrance to phase 2. Take a look here. We have a graphic kind of showing where the landscaping is proposed. The yellow here on the east and south where it borders the church is the L3, and the red line here on the north and east is where the proposed L4 will be going. And the black dash line here is what they're proposing to use for the existing screening with the existing vegetation that's present here on the south. Taking a closer look view at the construction emergency access here, you can see the gate will be here right at the entrance to phase 2 with the emergency access running down to connect with the right-of-way on Summit Road. There are 2 possible locations for stormwater detention that were proposed, and these are pending stormwater calculations and construction plan reviews. You can see those 2 proposed locations for the detention ponds outlined here in red. In addition to the phase 2 construction, the applicant also proposed some changes to phase 1, those being removing the existing west entrance and widening the east entrance to 30 feet, replacing the fence along East Broad Street with black wrought iron, and to remove the existing pool and add 8 customer parking spaces next to the 2,100 square also proposed renovating the existing home into an office with an additional manager's residence in the rear and to dedicate an additional 15 feet of right-of-way to the city. And we can see those zoomed in view of the phase 1 changes here. The west entrance is to be removed with some additional pavement and widening of the east entrance, and addition of customer parking spaces available here just to the south of the existing home. So the planning and zoning staff has reviewed the site plans that were submitted, and we'd like to offer the following comments. The first one being the future land use map designates this property as medium density residential. Therefore, the proposed use is not in line with the comprehensive plan. However, staff would like to point out that it is already zoned for commercial, that being the LB local business district. So since the initial September 11th, 2018 hearing, when the applicant initially submitted this, and it was tabled then, plans have been updated in response to staff comments that we had in several meetings since that point. Staff has found the proposed plan satisfies most of the requirements for the LB and GB zoning districts, as well as the requirements for landscaping and parking. However, we do have the following comments, which are our remaining concerns. One, because of the odd layout across 3 separate parcels, the proposed modifications to phase 1 will not meet the setback requirements of the GB district. For example, the proposed widening of the access drive would put it in between 2 separate parcels. So staff would recommend that the applicant combine all 3 of these parcels into one continuous parcel in order to bring it in compliance with the setback regulations, and we've included a possible modification to address this. 2, no tree survey was submitted, so pursuant to section 1283.03, any tree with a caliper of 8 inches or more shall be mitigated if being removed. We've added a possible modification for the applicant to submit a tree survey and replacement plan when applying for zoning permits. 3, there were 2 possible stormwater detention sites proposed. However, no stormwater calculations were submitted along with this. Staff believes that the final location and size can be determined during construction plan review. And we've also added a possible modification for the applicants, to submit those stormwater calculations for approval by the Public Service Director and the City Engineer when they're applying for zoning permits. 4, pursuant to 1256.06, any development within the TCOD area and developing more than 50% of the site must have a TCOD permit approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So the current proposal is for 35% of the area zoned local business to be developed. Should phases 3 or 4 be done later, the applicant will have to apply for a TCD permit and have that approved through the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we've also added a possible modification to address this. Any future development must be landscaped to meet requirements of section 1283. The applicant is proposing to use the existing vegetation in future phase 3 as screening for phase 2. Staff believes it to be unnecessary for them to install screening to the south if the applicant will be having to remove it in the next 2 to 3 years if they ever want to do an expansion to phase 3. In addition to that, the minimum standards of section 1283 can be waived upon presentation of an equivalent landscaping plan subject to approval by the zoning inspector, and additional screening may be required based on location of the stormwater facilities. So we've routed this application to other applicable city departments and agencies. The Public Service Director had the following comments, one being that the stormwater requirements can be coordinated with engineering plan review. 2, an ROW or right-of-way permit will be required for several items, including the construction entrance and the reconfiguration of the existing East Broad Street entrance. And his full comments are attached there in your staff reports. And the city engineer had only one comment, that the conditions of the Ohio EPA general construction permit should be adhered to. His full comments are also attached to your staff reports. We did not receive any other comments from any of the other applicable departments or agencies. So characteristics of the surrounding property. To the north, we have it zoned in general business, which is the existing storage facility, as well as some apartments and single-family homes. To the east, it's zoned R20, medium density residential. It's currently Franbar Park, or what's commonly known as the Hanatuchi. To the south, we have LB local business, which is a church, and also R20, which is the Falling Leaf subdivision. To the west, we have it zoned GB general business again, and some more R20 medium density residential. To the west is a trucking company and some additional single-family homes. We've included this graphic up here to show what the existing zoning is for the surrounding properties. So we have what's zoned LB here in the purple. R20 is the light yellow down here. GB is all the blue to the north, and a little bit of R87 here in the red. You'll have our findings of fact up here. These are also included in your staff reports. So should the board choose to approve the applicant's request, the following conditions may be considered. Number one, the applicant shall obtain all necessary permits from the city of Pataskala within 1 year of the date of approval. 2, the applicant shall provide a tree survey upon submission for zoning permits. 3, the applicant shall provide stormwater calculations for review by the public service director and city engineer upon submission for zoning permits. 4, the applicant shall combine all the lots with their parcel identification numbers listed up here into one. 5, the applicant shall supply Mylars of the plans upon approval of the zoning permit. And 6, the applicant will apply for a TCOD permit for any further expansion. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions? Yeah. Eric, that's a rather lengthy staff report, very detailed, thank you. Certainly appreciate it. I guess a couple things, more for clarification purposes. You didn't hear anything additional from any other agencies except public service and engineer. Have we heard anything from residents? Have we got any calls, questions on it, anything like that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm assuming the answer is yes, but you listed out staff's comments and or concerns in your report. We also had comments from engineering and public service. Can you just give us an assurity that the conditions you have recommended or proposed address all of those comments?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll have more questions as we go back to it. I guess that, as I think through it, have you talked with the applicant? Are they okay with combining the parcels? Is that a discussion in
Yeah.
place?
Yeah, we've had the conversation with the applicant initially, even before submittal, and they have agreed that they would adhere to that condition.
Okay, and then on this site plan, the future development phase 3, if that's to be the buffering, I guess maybe try to help me understand. If that's the buffering for phase 2, but it's marked as future development, if that's developed, maybe this is a dumb question, but does the buffering then not go away for phase 2, or what's the?
So the way they have it now is they want to use the existing vegetation, which would be the future phase 3 as screening for phase 2. But at such time, if the applicant chooses to develop phase 3, then they will have to install landscaping per code on all of the sites here. To
Okay.
the east, west, and south.
So their application, their request, if you could just pare it down to the basics, they're just wanting to extend the use onto what is marked as, I think it's marked as phase 2, these 4 buildings,
Yes.
is
that's
that correct?
Yes.
In the parking.
And the parking.
With the levy.
In the parking, okay. Okay. I'm sure we'll come back with more. Is the applicant, or are the applicants here, maybe we have a Brett Hatcher and a Corey Bondo.
Yes, sir.
You wish to speak?
Yes, of
Evidence testimony? You'll need to be sworn in, by Ms. Paxton, then you'll give your name and address for the record.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You're our first speaker for the night, so I'm gonna give the standard caveat that I do for you and everybody else in here. This board is to consider, evidence, testimony, that's it. Applicable to the application that we have before us. Opinions, comments, I don't like my neighbor's dog, that's nothing that we consider. So, just a preface for that. All questions, comments are to come to the board, no discussion between whoever's speaking in the audience. We've had it before, believe it or not, if you get out of hand, then we have no problem contacting the police and having you removed. So, as long as we all know the ground rules, we'll proceed.
Thank you. Well, it's great to see all you guys again. As always, Jack's report is extremely thorough. We've been working with him over the last 6 months to get this, application as thorough and meet every requirement as possible. Really the biggest thing we're looking to do is improve on a 30-year-old property by doing a lot of modifications to the front of the property as well as expanding to the back 12 acres of vacant land. We're adhering to all the landscaping requirements, and we fully intend to continue expansion in 2 years to then meet the requirements to have L4 landscaping wrap almost the entirety of the parcel as required. We have heard from a couple representatives and residents of the adjoining church and Falling Leaf Estates, and as always, we really want to make sure that all requirements, drainage, landscaping, all things that can affect the life of other people are adhered to and nothing else is affected. That's it, unless there's any other questions.
Okay, are there any questions from the board? Any questions from staff at this time?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir. I might ask you to come back up.
Anytime.
I have a couple speaker request forms. If you have not filled one out and you wish to speak on this or the next application, make sure you fill one out. And that is not them. What did I do with those? There. This one, I'm not sure which it goes to. Ryan Young, are you here for this application? Ryan Young, maybe left early, okay? Drew Clark. Okay. Gary Sunderman.
Was that Mr. Clark in the back there?
Yeah, I was here to speak on the first
Oh, I'm sorry.
application at that table,
Okay,
so I'm good,
okay.
thank you.
Gary Sunderman, that's 19, that's the other one also. Okay, striking that. Here we go, Tom Sampson. Okay, welcome, sir.
Hi.
Thank you for being the one that is still here. You'd be sworn in by Ms. Paxton.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
And sir, if you'd give your name and address for the record?
Sure. My name's Tom Sampson. I am a resident over in Falling Leaf. My address is 218 Autumn Way. The people here in Falling Leaf kind of asked me to come up and talk a little bit about some concerns we have with the storage units going in. I'll say right off first thing, we don't object to them going in at all, so that's not an issue. We just have a few concerns. One, probably the first one I'll bring up would be the lighting. We just want to make sure that we don't have any light bleed over into our neighborhood. We'd want to look out at night and, you know, see basically a second moon in the sky. So I'm not sure on the light poles that they're putting in, how tall are those light poles? How well are they going to be screened? How much bleed is going to come off of those? That would be a question I would have.
Okay.
A second question, and probably one of our main concerns, is the stormwater runoff. Because obviously we're paving a great deal of property here. We already have some issues where the property next to the housing is our wetlands. We actually own all of those. It's wetlands, preserve, and water typically drains from that area over to that. You know, we would have a large amount of concern over that. I know they have not done those calculations yet, but one thing I would for sure be asking immediately, whether it's developed or not, would be that retention area to be put in to help bleed off that water, because a lot of our stormwater runoff out of our homes runs over into our ponds. We have 2 ponds up front. So that would be the second one. The third concern we would have would be, and it didn't make sense here until I walked in tonight, but you were going to do a tree survey. How do you do a tree survey when they've already been cutting trees in those phases? So you don't know what's been cut and what is not. So I would have, that's just a concern I saw just walking in here and having you go through the plans. Another concern would be when they were cutting, part of our residents back up to the church, or this property really that they're talking doesn't back up to us, but we back up to the church. They were actually cutting trees on that church lot. I think, you know, maybe just an overzealous landscaper or whoever did it was cutting back there, cut in, you know, we're asking that trees be put back, I guess. I'm sure the church probably isn't real agreeable to that.
Yeah.
So those are our biggest concerns. But like I said, we don't disagree. We would like to have it done. We would like to have the screening done properly. So we really don't have to look at we don't wanna have to see the storage units, if that makes sense.
Okay.
You know, I know they said for future use that they would like to remove that screening possibly in the next phase. I would not wanna see that done. I would object to that, even though it may be, you know, maybe allowed per your code. I would have some objections to, that screening leaving us. That's why we bought in that subdivision. It's nice, it's quiet, we had trees around us, and we don't wanna see those trees leave.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Questions for Mr. Sampson from the board?
I just have one, concerning your wetlands and existing retention ponds, where are they in relation to this land?
Our wetlands back right up to it.
Can you show on the map where your ponds are? And do we know, like,
This
is
is
there
your
any
sub,
kind of-
this is our subdivision. We have wetland right through here.
How
So
many
their,
acres
and their
is it?
proposed retention pond would be up here, and I think they have another retention pond up here proposed.
Yeah.
So if they put this retention pond in, hopefully it makes us, you know, a lot of our flooding go away, because if you let all this water start running off here, it's gonna start running down into these homes. It's gonna push a lot of water that direction. And that's really what we're trying to prevent.
Okay, any other questions? Staff?
No.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have no other speaker request forms. Is there anybody else that wants to speak, give evidence or testimony to this application? Okay. So I'm gonna ask staff, as to the tree survey, we heard the question about there's already been trees removed. How do we address that? Maybe take us back to the landscaping requirements and kinda how does that take place? How do we determine what was there? And then, I guess, then what needs to be there? Maybe walk us through that.
Well, as far as what was there, it's kind of difficult to identify unless we go with the stumps to say this was freshly cut. So
Sure.
as part of the tree survey, we probably need to look at, have someone go out and take a look at, you know, their fresh stumps that have not been ground or removed. Can we identify when those were cut down? It is illegal if you have a zoning permit or an application in the process to just go start cutting trees. Unfortunately, we were not aware of this. So I think as part of the tree survey, we'll need to have any trees that were cut that meet the threshold for tree preservation to be identified as part of that plan and mitigated appropriately, as part of the tree preservation policy.
Okay. Do you have a mechanism to have aerial views, Google Earth type thing that you can go back in a timeline and say, hey, this is what was there, or in general? I mean,
Realistically, we would need updated aerial maps that, depending upon when those were cut, if Google doesn't update their aerial, that we can see distinct change. It's just looking at what was versus what's there now. So I think it would be under the purview of the person doing the tree study to identify what has been removed, and if anything has been removed contrary to the code.
so my understanding that this application was submitted in September of 18, if I've been correct, or maybe submitted prior to that, but originally came to this board September 11th of 18. Yeah, am I understanding you correctly? If trees have been removed from that point till now, they would be applicable to the tree survey, right? They should be included
Correct. Because
if they still exist.
Yeah, they should not, if they meet that threshold, they should not have been removed until a tree survey was conducted.
Okay. Okay. To the lighting, I guess tell us how how do you control, how do you require downcast lighting? How do you keep that so you're not bleeding onto other properties, obviously. You know, that, it seems like a significant distance across the, church property in this wooded area in this phase 3. But if you're putting, you know, huge parking lot Cobra headlights on 20 or 30-foot poles, it's gonna shine. So what can we do there? I think that's a valid concern. I'd like to hear how either you would recommend this board address that, or maybe you can tell us how you guys as staff would address that.
Well, I think as part of the plan, they have indicated that you would cut off downcast lights, so that should help. But if you have a 50-foot tall light, not saying this is, it's not gonna do much to reduce glare. So one possibility would be to indicate the type of lamp head that they're gonna use, indicate height, and they could do a lighting study to determine how much that's gonna bleed over onto other property. And if so, does that violate the code? There's a certain threshold for lighting that if they can indicate in foot candles that if we have a light here, here's the foot candles that'll produce in the surrounding area, just to ensure that it does meet the code and try and keep as much of that light on the applicant's property as possible. So a lighting study could be performed to indicate that there will be no adverse effects.
Okay, I'm gonna ask that in this time that we're in this hearing here, maybe one of you draft up some language as a potential number 7 condition to address that, if you would mind to do so. That would be my suggestion. Maybe the board doesn't think that, but I think that if we have it in the code, I'd like to see it, if this board was to approve this application and include it in the approval.
Would that study also include any lighting on the buildings as opposed, in addition to the pole lighting?
That's correct.
Okay. And then Mr. Sampson brought up the stormwater runoff in the retention ponds. I guess I didn't look closely. Is that retention or detention? What are we talking here? They're just calling this a ponding area. Do we know where the runoff from the stormwater goes from the ponds?
Not without stormwater calculations.
Okay, but that would be a condition of approval that you've provided?
That is correct, and typically, as we know, with stormwater, it will either remain the same, more often than not, it improves, once they have stormwater controls in place.
Okay. You suggested that as a condition. I'm satisfied with that simply because I have the full faith in Mr. Haynes and the other Mr. Haynes that they'll address that correctly in the stormwater calcs. So I don't know that this, other than what you've provided, that we need to do anything else. I think that Jobs Henderson, for you all that know, and Hall and Associates, I think they do an excellent job. I think that stormwater will be addressed. And this board putting that as a condition, I think I'm comfortable with that. I don't think I have any other questions for staff at this time. Are there any questions from the board?
No, I have no.
No.
My main concerns are is exactly what Mr. Sampson brought up, the lighting, the stormwater, and not too thrilled that trees have been removed. I'm gonna assume that the applicant was not aware of that. The problem is, how do we determine what was there to get that included into the tree survey? We might wanna tweak the language of condition number 2 to somehow include previous trees, through September of 2018. I don't know the best way to determine that. I don't know. I'm gonna ask you guys to work on the lighting language, I'm sure you are, but I think that we need to do something with, number 2 also. Okay, the applicant, sir, if you'd come back up. So tell us about you're obviously coming to us asking for approval, tell us about the lighting.
So the lighting is in 2 different ways. There are wall packs that attach to the buildings. The buildings generally range from 9 feet to 12 feet tall, so that means the lighting's gonna be near the top of the building. They're activated at night. The light poles are obviously the bigger issue. They generally are either between 18 and 20 feet. We will 100% work with our engineer to get a lighting survey, as we've done in the past, to very clearly show where the lighting starts and then how it orchestrates to the surrounding properties. Do you want me to keep going through the other questions?
If you would, I'd like some information.
As Scott said, when you do stormwater improvement, a lot of times the actual areas get better as you put in new technology, new catch basins, etc. We did not go through full stormwater calculations as we wanted to get your guys' input, everyone's input on the site plan, so that way we can then get our impermeable surface, calculate all that according with our engineers and your guys' engineers. Everything will either stay the same or improve. We will decide later between a retention and a detention pond. Moving on to the trees. We did have a landscaper go through to mow. We used the word mow to satisfy this, and no trees were cut that had a caliber over 8 inches, per the code, is the way we described it. We are having a tree survey done pending this meeting by the end of the week. We can include that recently cut stumps. I'm not really sure how to, I've never worked with a tree forester before on an engineering survey, but we can do anything in our possibility to address that. And then finally, it wasn't brought up, but security, we install generally 2 to 4 cameras per buildings, and we will make sure that all security, not only of our property, but of anyone coming from adjoining properties, is to the met to the most high standard.
Okay. Tell us a little more about this phase 3, this wooded area. Maybe give us a little insight to what your intent is.
So our general plan is phase 3 will continue with more mini storage buildings, kind of the buildings 2 and 3. The middle 2 buildings is our general standard building. We are going with a climate control building for the far left, test that out. So those would be the 2 types of building types that we do for phase 3, continue with the mini storage aspect, and then phase 4 we would look into other permitted uses.
Okay.
I have a question about the retention ponds. You have those in phase 2 and phase 3. What will you do? Will those be put in when phase 1 is put in?
Really just comes back to the stormwater calculations. I'm not an engineer, I don't know exactly how it works. I think it's possible that we can meet all the requirements and improve the area without doing a pond off of this phase, but until we get the stormwater calculations and how quickly it leaves the property, or where it would naturally leave the property, that's when the size and location of the pond is generally determined. I know our stormwater is supposed to flow towards Summit Road, heading back towards the west.
So, you need to think about that in the condition.
Okay. Okay, I don't think I have any other questions, but I have some clarification from staff. Anybody else for the applicant?
No.
Okay, thank you, sir. Give me some clarification, Scott and Jack, on the application is for we cite it as the entire parcel. I guess what in here tells us that this is just for this phase that they're talking about, these 4 buildings in the parking lot. I guess I want a little assurance that if they come back for phase 3 and phase 4, it's gotta come back to this board. I don't want just a general blanket approval of conditional use.
Based upon what they've submitted, it only shows that section, so they show nothing else on the rest of the property. So to expand it to the entire property, they would need to come back and get additional conditional uses for that. And at that point, they'll also hit the TCOD threshold. It would be the board's pleasure if there's a condition placed upon it, that the conditional use is only applicable to phase 2 of the proposal this evening. And there's further assurance that any subsequent expansion will need approvals from the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I think I would want that language in there. The applicant's asking for phase 2, the site plan I have in front of me is dated February 14 of this year, so I think I would want language in there that cites that, as submitted in the application, applicable only to phase 2 of shown on the site plan of that date. Any other questions from the board?
No.
Applicant? You're good?
Yes, sir.
You've seen the staff's recommended conditions, the merging of the parcels, all that, the things we've talked about. Any questions or concerns or comments from you?
Nope.
Anybody in here in the audience? Questions, comments, concerns?
Yes,
Anybody
I have
wishes
one
to
more.
speak? Feel free to come to the mic, Mr. Sims.
Yes, just going back to the parking lot light
Okay.
situation, I do have some experience with that. 20 feet is fine. I know they'll be done LED because that's all you can really get anymore, and that's the most energy efficient. The one thing I would ask for is that they're not like what we call a bright white. I want them to be more of a warm white, so it's just not as obtrusive when you're looking at it. Does that make sense?
Lighting pollution, you're worried
Yes.
about light pollution.
I work for Outfront Media, so I know lighting pollution really well, and I fight with people all the time over it. So I understand his end of it, I understand my end of it as a homeowner right now. So that's why I would ask for something more of a warm white color. And I know that if he works with like a Hall of Fame or somebody, they can directionally light these to get him to do whatever he needs to do. So
Okay.
that's my biggest concern. Thank you.
Scott and Jack, do you feel that the code that talks about lighting addresses his concerns as far as brightness and that?
It talks about glare, but it doesn't talk about white versus warm or anything along that spectrum of.
Mr. Sampson, could you give us just something for us to consider? I know that in the LEDs, I think it's just in the LEDs, you got the 4K, 5K, all that stuff that means.
That's all based on
Nothing.
lumens, and I mean, that's done on a lighting study. We would ask that probably the minimum be done to light this facility. I know he's concerned about security. I don't blame he's put a lot of money into this. As far as just bright, I'm not concerned with we are concerned with the brightness. Obviously, the lower you can hold your light poles, the better. I'm not sure what he's planning on parking back there. Like I said, I think you're at a 20-foot max, probably on your light poles. Other than that, like I said, a warmer white gets you a softer lighting, and that's more like like if you look in here, these are what they consider a bright white versus something that's in your home, the old style, what I call them old style bulbs anymore,
Mhm.
give you that warmer effect.
Okay,
Anything else I can answer?
I don't think so. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Maximum, I don't know. So Scott, I think based on what the applicant said, I think a pole light for the parking area, this board would like to see a maximum 20 foot.
Okay.
If there, for that number 7, a lighting plan would be required. And I would think that the best thing for this board to do is to turn it over to you all, for final approval of that review. You know the concerns of this board, we would obviously want the minimum, glare, brightness, things like that would achieve what the applicant's needing. I was confident though between the code and between you all, you can address that. Is that agreed by the board?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Scott, do you have a proposed number 7 for us?
I do, I have a few proposals, so, when the applicant mentioned that all the trees removed were under 8 inches in caliper, that does not meet the 8 inches is the threshold for tree replacement, so if that's all that was removed, there should not be anything that would trigger the tree replacement requirements, but I do have a provision for 2, that we can amend it to the applicant shall provide a tree survey of existing and any applicable trees removed upon submission of a zoning permit.
Of existing and any applicable?
Correct. And what I can do is I can read these off, and if you'd like, my version, if it's acceptable, I can just give you the sheet instead of you having to write them all down.
I would appreciate that.
Would you like me?
Number 7, please.
Might make it easier. Number 7, the applicant shall provide a light study to the Planning and Zoning Department for review and approval to ensure compliance with section 128709. That's the section that addresses glare onto adjacent properties.
And such approvals shall be subject to planning and zoning staff.
Correct.
If we could add that in the end. And you've addressed stormwater in number 3.
I
I
have
guess-
3 more if you'd like me to read them off, just to make
Yeah,
sure we
absolutely.
encapsulated everything. Number 8, the conditional use shall only apply to phase 2 of the application. Any subsequent expansion shall require a conditional use approval from the Board of Zoning Appeals. Number 9, all lighting shall be warmer white in variety. And 10, the maximum height of lighting shall be 20 feet in height and shall have a cutoff downcast fixture.
And your number 8, can you cite, phase 2 of the site plan dated 2/14/19? Applicant, you've heard all these and you're still good with them.
Yes, sir.
Board have any other questions?
No.
Comments, concerns? Okay. So what we do, for all of you that are here, we have, findings of fact. Jack showed us earlier, things that this board has to consider, so I will go through these. Again, this is for CU-18-005. Number 1 is in fact a conditional use as established under the provisions of Title III of the Planning and Zoning Code for the specific zoning district of the parcel and/or parcels listed on the application.
Yes.
Number 2 will be harmonious with and in accordance with the general objectives or with any specific objective of the city comprehensive plan and/or this code.
Yes.
No, isn't it?
The comp plan has it as residential, it's zoned as GBLB.
Yeah, and there's a church there, and there's also,
It's the future plan though.
It's the future plan, I guess, is where the conflict is, right?
so is the future comprehensive plan or the current comprehensive plan?
The only thing legally we can look at this time is the current comprehensive plan.
And your testimony was that it is showed as residential.
Correct.
I go back and forth, it's harmonious with what's there, he's expanding the existing, but it's not in accordance with the current comp plan. I think you have to say no. Anybody else?
If it doesn't fall within the current one, and we can't consider the new one, then I guess we would, have to say no.
I'll say no.
Chad?
No.
Number 3, will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as to be harmonious in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, and that such use will not change the essential character of the same area.
Yes.
Yes.
Number 4, will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses.
No.
Will not be.
Yes. Will not be hazardous.
So you answer yes to the not, to the negative, right?
Yes.
To make it, yeah, so we do yes on that one.
Yes, on the
Agree?
Because
So
it's
no.
a
Okay.
negative.
I said yes.
Okay. Will be served adequately by essential public facilities and services such as highways, streets, police and fire drainage structures, refuse disposal, water and sewer and schools, or that the persons or agencies responsible for the establishment of the proposed use shall be able to provide adequately any such services.
Yes.
Number 6, will not create excessive additional requirements of public cost for public facilities and services and will not be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community.
Yes.
Number 7, will not involve uses, activities, processes, materials, equipment, and conditions of operations that will be detrimental to any person's property or the general welfare, including but not limited to excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odor, potential for explosion, and air or water pollution.
Yes.
Yes.
Will have vehicular approaches to the property which shall be so designed as to not create an interference with traffic on surrounding public thoroughfares.
Yes.
Yes.
And finally, number 9, will not result in destruction, loss, or damage of a natural, scenic, or historic feature of major importance.
Yes.
Ms. Paxton, I have yes for everything except for number 2. I have a no for number 2. Okay, those are the findings of facts for CU 18-005. I'll remind you, legal suggestion is any motion is to be a motion to approve, and then the board decides on that motion. If we are to make a motion to approve it, I would recommend we use the list that Scott uses if he would be so gracious to recite it at that time or give it to us. What is the pleasure of the board?
I move to approve a conditional use pursuant to section 1247.04, 22 of the Pataskala Code for application CU-18-005 with the following conditions. 1, the applicant shall obtain all necessary permits from the city of Pataskala within 1 year of the date of approval. 2, the applicant shall provide a tree survey of existing and any applicable trees removed upon submission for the zoning permit. 3, the applicant shall provide stormwater calculations for review by the Public Service Director and City Engineer upon submission for zoning permit. The applicant shall combine all lots, which includes 063-141, 402-00.000, and partial number 063-145-914-00.000, and partial 063-147-282-00.000, and 1 partial. Number 5, the applicant will supply milers of the plans upon approval of the zoning permit. 6, the applicant will apply for a TCOD permit for any further expansion. 7, the applicant shall provide a light study to the Planning and Zoning Department for review and approval to ensure compliance with section 1287.09 of the code. Number 8, the conditional use shall only apply to phase 2 of the application and the plan dated February 14th of 2019. Any subsequent expansion shall require conditional use approval from this Board of Zoning Appeals. Number 9, all lighting shall be a fixture that is it shall be a warmer white in variety. And number 10, the maximum height of lighting shall be 20 feet in the height and shall have a cutoff downcast fixture.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Lengthy as it may be.
No discussion.
No discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. McKittrick,
Yes.
Mr. Platt,
Yes.
Ms. Rodebeck,
Yes.
Mr. Howe.
Yes.
Congratulations, your application has been approved with all 10 of those supplementary conditions added. Thank you for coming tonight, thank you to all those that came. Certainly tried to address all the concerns and feel that we have, so. Have a good evening, if you wish to stay for our last application, feel free. If not, you won't hurt our feelings. So, Lisa.
Huh?
There's a lot of reading.
Yeah. Thank you. You what? Oh, wow.
All right, so we will move on to new business. This will be 5A, conditional use application CU-19-001. I would ask staff to give the report. I'm gonna grab some water while you do so.
Do you want me to continue?
Go ahead.
Okay, like I said, this is CU-19-001. The applicant here is Mr. Calvin L. Berkeley, doing business as Cal's Towing. Location's at 421 West Broad Street. Current acreage is at 1.66 acres, and it is zoned GB General Business. So for this, the applicant is requesting approval of a conditional use pursuant to section 1249-04 to allow for the property to be used as a vehicle towing service. Take a look here at the area map, you can see the parcel outlined in yellow with Broad Street running east to west here, directly on the frontage. Like I've said, the property is 1.66 acres in size, has approximately 160 feet of frontage onto West Broad Street. Existing buildings are a 4,900 square foot commercial building that was built in 1971 and a 2,250 square foot pole barn that was built in 1986. And the majority of this lot is paved with gravel. There's two gravel paved access points on the West Broad Street with an existing sign between these two access points, and previously this location, was previously used as a location for Sally's Hearth and Home. If you take a look here, you can see the existing conditions on the lot, the commercial building here in the center, the pole barn south, with the two gravel access points on either side, and the paved gravel area here. So for the proposal, like we said, the applicant is requesting a conditional use to operate the property as a satellite towing operation for his business, Cal's Towing. So pursuant to 1249-04 Part 19, motor vehicle towing, which is NAICS code 488410, is a conditional use in the GB General Business District. For a little general summary of the site plan that was submitted, there's a front parking area and access drives that are going to be paved with 6 visitor parking spaces on the north side of the building. The rear area is to be enclosed in a 6-foot-high fence with an additional 1 foot of barbed wire on top, which will serve as employee parking as well as an impounded vehicle storage lot. And the existing pole barn is proposed to be used for tow truck parking. You can see here just a quick look at the proposed site plan. Visitor parking here on the front side. You've got the location of the proposed fence outlined in red surrounding the rear part of the property, with the existing pole barn and spaces for impounded vehicles here, employee parking being right here next to the existing building. In addition to this, the existing signage is to be maintained. Part of the narrative statement was that there will be three to four employees in the early stages. They will offer the following services: 24/7 police impound and storage, light medium duty towing and recovery, roadside assistance, and classic car transportation. So in the narrative statement, the applicant stated that the reason they chose this location for its conveniency to offer services to residents and the city police. The fenced-in area is to be lighted and secured with the existing building to function as an office, and the applicant believes there will be no reason to suspect hazardous substances or activities disturbances that will be detrimental to the surrounding properties. Applicant also stated that the entrances will be paved and improved to meet city requirements, and that he intends to improve appearance of the property frontage. So as part of this, planning and zoning reviewed the submitted site plan. We'd like to offer the following comments. So according to the future land use map, designates this property as light industrial. So therefore would not be in line with the comprehensive plan. However, the property is currently zoned for commercial use. Staff reviewed the site plan and offers the following comments. One being pursuant to section 1249.05C, when abutting non-residential districts, the setbacks for the GB general business district shall be on the side, 25 for structures, and 10 feet for paved areas, and to the rear, 30 feet for structures and 10 feet for paved areas. So the existing pole barn would not meet these, however, since it is existing, it is grandfathered in. The site plan did not include any measurements for the proposed impound yard location, so any paved areas and parking areas must be at least 10 feet from the property lines. And two, pursuant to section 1283.07B, conformance with the applicable landscaping standards was not shown on this site plan. So for the first part, no landscaping is required for the side or rear. However, L2 standard landscaping will be required along the frontage, and L2 consisting of a continuous 3-foot high shrub or mound or wall screening and one tree for every 30 feet. Three, we've got pursuant to section 1291.15, a minimum width of the access drives for one-way traffic is 14 feet. Minimum width of access drives for two-way traffic is 28 feet. And the applicant's proposing to keep both of these access points open. So staff believes that one should be limited to one-way in and the other should be limited to one-way out. Both of those to be improved to that 14 feet width with appropriate signage and arrows to indicate the one-way status of those routes. 4, pursuant to 1291.16, there are no minimum parking requirements for proposed use, but pursuant to that same section, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall reserve the right to determine if the unlisted use is similar to one listed or determine the number of parking spaces needed. With this, however, the staff believes that the number of parking spaces that was proposed should be sufficient. And 5, pursuant to 1291.02 Part 4, all off-street parking spaces shall be of hard surface asphalt, concrete, or pavers. The applicant has not indicated paving material for the impound yard. However, if it is proposed to be gravel, a variance may be required. And 6, city code requires an 8-foot wide asphalt path to be installed along frontage of East Broad Street when properties are developed. This relates to the TCOD. However, option to pay a fee in lieu does exist. As there are no existing path connections near the proposed redevelopment, staff believes the fee in lieu would be much more appropriate for this property. As part of this, we routed it around to all the applicable departments in the city and agencies. The Public Service Director has offered the following comments. One being the use of the existing drives as separate entrances and exit is appropriate and shall be required. Otherwise, they should reduce to a single access point with the appropriate width. And 2, if impervious area is increased, stormwater facilities may be required, coordinate accordingly. 3, provide additional right-of-way along Broad Street to bring the right-of-way on the south side of Broad Street to 60 feet as measured from the center line of Broad Street to the proposed right-of-way line. And his full comments are attached there to your staff report. The city engineer submitted sort of a typical comment again with this one. The conditions of the Ohio EPA general construction permit must be adhered to if earth disturbing activities are anticipated. Again, his full comments are attached there as the staff report. And we also routed this to the Licking County Health Department as the building is currently on a well and septic system. And his comments were 1, if no buildings are being demolished and new buildings reconnected to the septic system, no permits will be needed. 2, if new buildings are added and tied into the existing system, permits and site evaluation will be required. And 3, if the system is going to supply water for more than 25 individuals on a daily basis or has more than 15 service connections, it would no longer be under the jurisdiction of the Licking County Health Department, but would come under jurisdiction of the Ohio EPA and require separate permits and inspections from them. And of course, his full comments are attached there in your staff report. So characteristics of the surrounding properties: to the north, we have it zoned general business, that's currently a farm field. To the east is zoned general business, however, it's currently vacant. To the south, we have M1 Light Manufacturing, which is a warehouse space, and M1 Light Manufacturing also to the west, which is currently the CenturyLink building. Take a look here at the map, we can kind of see a little rendering of what the zoning looks like around. We've got blue to the north and east being GB, general business. The lighter orange areas are the M1 Light Manufacturing. Also have some residential on a very side over here, R15, some agricultural up here to the northwest, and where we are currently, the city hall is in GB with the police station behind it being PRO. Your findings of fact are up there, also listed there in your staff report. So as part of this, should the board choose to approve the applicant's request, we've suggested the following supplementary conditions. Number one being the applicant shall obtain all necessary permits from the city of Pataskala and the Licking County Building Department within 1 year of the date of approval. Two, the applicant shall address all comments from the planning and zoning staff, city engineer, public service director, and the Licking County Health Department. Three, the applicant shall either provide an 8-foot wide asphalt path along the frontage or pay the fee in lieu. And four, the applicant shall ensure that any lighting shall not constitute a nuisance and shall in no way impair safe movement of traffic on any street or highway. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff?
This is just a curiosity. If they pay the payment, the fee in lieu, what is the payment?
The payment would be that, and it's at the discretion of the city administrator or their designee. So the payment, if the fee in lieu is implemented, then the cost of installing that path along the front, an estimate is provided, typically the public service director, who would look at the estimate and say that's accurate. We don't go out and do our own estimate. It's just as long as it's not, there's no way this is gonna cost $10 kind of thing.
Sure.
Then that goes into a fund, a dedicated fund that goes towards filling in gaps in our pedestrian and bikeway system. So for example, if you see a lot of folks walking to Kroger, it can be pretty dangerous that if there is, that can be applied to filling in those gaps, instead of having a path that may never be used for years. It makes more sense to apply it to that to make safer travel routes. And then in the future, the applicant has fulfilled their obligation for a path that it would be the city's then responsibility as paths move out this way to make that connection on behalf of the applicant.
Okay, so it goes into a designated fund.
That's correct.
Okay.
Is that, just again for curiosity, is that fee payment in lieu of, is that, not that I wanna get hung up on that, but is that something required by the city? Is that something you're recommending could be a condition put on by this BZA, or is that in the city code anywhere, resolution, ordinance?
It's in the code. Typically, if there's properties that develop on TCOD areas, Broad, 310, Mink, Summit, Taylor, that it's typically been required. More often than not, per code, it's required as part of the TCOD, but it's typically required as anything develops along Broad as policy.
Is this project subject to the TCOD?
It is not, because they are not developing or redeveloping 50% or more of the site. They're essentially using it as is, aside from the pavement improvements, fence, etc.
Okay, so because it's not TCOD, you're asking us to enforce an 8-foot path or a fee in lieu of, is that correct?
We're proposing it as an option for the board to consider.
But there's no guarantee to the applicant that that money would be held by the city and used on his property, it potentially could be used somewhere else.
That's correct.
What if 10 years from now, another applicant, he sells his property, applicant comes in with a new use, let's say it is for 50% or more of the property, would they be subject to the fee then, or could it be a double charge?
No, that property has fulfilled its obligation at that point.
Yeah, this one for keep owns the property. The owns. Yes.
How do we know that? Is that in the TCOD? Or do we put that language in there? I'd hate for the guy to pay a fee and then later the use changes or something and somebody else is subject to it too. You know what I mean? They'd have to research back and find out.
Yeah, I
what did this
understand,
board
but
do?
aside from identifying every parcel in the city that has done that, it's part of the application, so this is all in the files, recorded, that whoever's there 20 years in the future can always look back and see, was that paid, has it been allocated, but unfortunately, that's kinda how things work, that these end up in a shelf
Mhm.
in a room that there's no way, aside from upgrading our GIS system, which we're trying to do, to have it at a click of a button. There's always gonna be that element of research to determine that.
Not even microfiche.
Not even old school.
Well, then it
Good
comes down to
research.
still, we're scanning everything and trying to find the time to do that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because he's not, can we have the applicant come up to the?
we will. Yep. Are we good then? I have no speaker request forms. The applicant is Mr. Berkey. Are you here this evening, sir? Do you wish to present evidence, testimony, speak to this board? Please be sworn in by Ms. Paxton.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
And if you give your name and address for the record, sir.
Yes, my name's Cal Berkey, from Calvin Berkey Enterprises.
Okay.
421 West Broad Street, I'm out of Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, and you've heard the staff report that's been presented. Do you have additional information that you'd like to give this board?
Not really, I just wanted to thank you all for letting me come out here tonight and for considering the zoning. I did want to make it plain that I have not struck a deal and I have not bought the property yet. I was advised, and it made sense to me, to make sure that we could get the zoning before we crawled out there on the limb and found out we didn't strike a deal. So I wanted you to know that we're acting in good faith, and we run a good operation. We're not the stereotype towing. We tow for 5 police departments currently, been in business for 45 years. And there's 3 generations represented here tonight. I have my daughter, my grandson with me, and we're acting in good faith. The one thing I was surprised and disappointed in was the pathway. It would lead to nowhere, and evidently that's kind of new to your community. Is there a chance that that could be waived?
I'm not, at this point, seeing that it's a requirement, so I don't know if there'd be anything to waive. It's more of a consideration of this board. Do we want to enact that as a condition of approval of your application?
Well, I think you understand where I'm coming from. I think the idea is kind of new to the community, and of course it adds to the cost of doing business, the startup cost, and so I'd like to request a change in that. Other than that, I guess I don't have anything else for you folks. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't believe so. I see, other than I see on the application, and this goes back to what you said, property owners, David Ness, signed off on it, and then you all have signed off on it also. So I think we have an understanding. Maybe you're just doing your due diligence and trying to figure it out, and your purchase is contingent, so. I don't have any other questions. Anybody? Staff?
No,
Anything
sir.
for the applicant? Okay, thank you, Mr. Berkey.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would like to speak to this application? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward. I don't have a speaker request for you, so please state your name and address for the record and be sworn in by Ms. Paxton.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm Pamela Parkinson, and I own the property right next to Dave Smith, Sally Stoves. And I am having a little bit of runoff water into my property, about halfway back to the driveway. There isn't a whole lot of room between him and his driveway and my line of my property. And how many cars did he think was gonna be towed in there for how long? Is it gonna be a permanent situation, like a used car lot that's?
Staff, was that addressed?
No, it's not. We've had it in
In terms of it becoming a car lot, there would be no approvals at this time for it to be a car lot. This is just for the towing lot, so there would
Towing
be,
should be moved rather rapidly off of there all the time, or is it gonna be?
and
like-
that'll be, I think that'll be a question for the applicant in terms of how long they're stored there, but if the applicant wants to turn it into a car lot, they need additional approvals to do.
Okay, that's something we'll follow up on shortly here.
And like I said, if you notice the property line, there's a little bit of drainage from their property into mine, and I think that needs to be looked at seriously.
You are to the west?
I'm to the east of them.
And what is that currently being used for?
Pardon?
What is it currently being used for?
Mine is a vacant lot right now. Within about 2 weeks or with less than a month, I have put a price on it, put a for sale sign on it. And I've had a lot of people very, very interested. But I gotta protect it so I can sell it. And it's a concern of mine.
Okay. All right, do you have anything else to this board?
No, I just don't want a lot of oil or anything like that seeping onto my property either. That is a concern when you have junk cars or towing cars or whatever. That does concern me a little bit of any kind of waste like that.
Okay. All right, anything else?
Nope.
Board, questions? Staff?
No.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mhm.
Mr. Berkey, I would like to follow up on the duration of the stay of the vehicles. What do you anticipate that to be? And I would think that this board would want to put some sort of maximum time frame per vehicle on as a condition. Do you have any idea what that might be? Are we talking a week, 2 weeks, a month? I
I
have no
would
idea.
say maximum 30 days.
Okay.
When you do police impound work and accidents, you always have the cars that someone wants to abandon. And those become really difficult to get rid of, sometimes 2 to 3 years. I would not expect to store those cars there. I do have a 9-acre storage yard in Columbus, and we process those cars there. I call it fresh meat, old meat. In other words, fresh cars, old cars. Usually when you're doing impounding work for the police departments and accidents, they turn around pretty quickly. In other words, if somebody's got an OMBI or something, they want to get their car back and get on the road. Same way with accidents. You know, the insurance company comes by within 7 days to a week, or 10 days, and they pick them up and take them for repair. Once they go beyond, once we recognize them as being junk, obviously we can't store them too long, there's not that much room there. They would be transported to our other lot in Columbus. And I understand and appreciate her concerns. We're not gonna be dismantling and junking cars and tearing them apart there, nor are we gonna be selling cars.
And do you have a standard operating procedure for spills, like gasoline and oil spills?
We have pans, if you will. They're large pans that you can slide under the vehicle. And anything like that, we really don't see that many of those.
Okay.
A real bad accident perhaps, but we
Right.
have oil dry that we keep and, large flat pans that
So
contain
you have procedures in
garbage.
place
Yes,
for that, so
Correct.
environmentally, you wouldn't disturb other properties surrounding?
absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
it's gonna be my property, I don't want it polluted either. I don't know about the water runoff. I wanna be a good neighbor regardless of who's gonna be next door, for what that's worth.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Scott and Jack, in your report, in your conditions, prepared, you have number 2, the applicant shall address all comments from P and Z, staff, engineer, service director, health department, et cetera. I think address is fine, I think it needs to say address and adhere to.
Well, and typically, what we do is address that if we don't wanna get in a situation where we put, you have to do X, Y, or Z. So let's
Okay.
say you have to do X, you shall do X, and then we meet with the applicant and they say, if we could do Y, that'd be easier. And staff says, I agree, Y makes more sense. Then we've held the applicant just to X, which means we have to go all the way back through the process to get the condition changed.
Okay,
So we'd like to leave it more open-ended, that if there's some discussion with these applicants, that if there's something that works out better, we'd like to have that flexibility.
that's not my phone, is it? I certainly understand what you're saying. My concern is I wanna make sure that the OEPA reference gets in there. As far as the health department's things, I guess, are we confident that the language that you provided in 2 make sure that those comments that are on page 3 of your report are would be included then?
Yes.
Okay. That's good enough for me then. I would say we would need to add a number 5, duration no more than, duration of stay for each vehicle to be no more than 30 days. On a number 6, that salvage/scrap services and sales are to be, vehicle sales are to be prohibited. Those were discussed by the applicant. I would recommend that those be added as a number in 5 and 6. Can you go back to your map, your aerial, please? And I guess just for clarification, there are no other pedestrian facilities in that area,
That's correct.
nowhere near.
Correct.
Any plan to do so?
I'm
not talking about
at this
open
time,
green,
there
but
would
we don't
not
have-
be, the closest is a potential subdivision across the street, but that doesn't really provide anything.
Approximate cost to the business. You can't estimate that at all.
You're into it, that's right away. It's gonna be their spec. I guess I struggle with that a little bit. I understand the point. I guess I'm a little uncomfortable putting that on an applicant at this time. I think if the city wanted to change the code to where we have something in ours for properties that develop that don't go to the TCOD, it sounds to me like there's an avenue for that at the TCOD with the 50% development. I'm a little uncomfortable taking that into our realm. I certainly see the intent. I don't know, I struggle with that one.
Okay, too.
Other than that, I don't see anything wrong with the application. I would add number 5 and 6, or I guess it could become number 4 and 5 if number 3 were to disappear. So, that being said, is there any other questions, comments, concerns from the audience, attendees? the board and or staff.
As far as parking and number of vehicles, I see right here that there's 23 allocated slots.
Okay.
And is that accurate, or is that a guesstimate of the number of parking places?
There's nothing in the code that requires, like, in this situation for storage of vehicles, for a towing company, there's nothing in the code that has any requirement on minimum, maximum storage.
So they don't have to have an actual parking slot?
That's
per
correct.
se.
It's not required to be striped.
This is their general thought of what, the way they see it. It's
Correct.
being used.
Correct.
Would you recommend that this board put in place any kind of maximum parking, or is this code as it is right now sufficient? Is there a need to do so?
I wouldn't think so unless it's proposed to be, you know, hundreds upon hundreds of cars, but then I think from a business perspective, that creates a lot of issues, that if someone's to pick up their car and you have to move 12 to get to it. So,
Wouldn't be able to move
I know
through?
with the mechanic, though, we had put some stipulations on to state how many he could have on his property, so I just wanted to make sure that we were staying within our standards.
yeah, for the mechanic, because that was outdoor storage, and if someone came in to get their car fixed, they would have to put it in a parking space. With this, it's a storage lot that's screened off and not, or fenced off, excuse me, and not, the public can't access it.
Okay.
It's not like if they came into the mechanic, I fixed the car, I put it out into the parking spot. They pay me, here are your keys, and then they go. This would, they'd come in to get their car, and then an employee would retrieve it from the lot and bring it out, so it would not be accessible to the public, so.
Okay. And even the asphalt, like we've required some places to have asphalt for the storage, for like RV storage. This wouldn't fall into that purview.
If they're expanding the size of the lot, it's required to be paved. If they maintain the existing gravel, it can be maintained in perpetuity.
Okay, so it would be a new facility that would require that.
That's correct.
Thank you for
New or
clarifying.
expansion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Yes.
Well, go ahead and come back up the mic so you can be on the recording.
Wait, Pamela,
Where is
take
the
it up.
fence supposed to come, where's the fence going to be put? Is that in front of the storage room, building in the back? Where is that fence gonna be put?
You can see here on the site plan, it's the red outline, so it'll be just behind the front of the existing building and surrounding that rear area around the existing pole barn.
And where those lines are, that's where the parking's gonna be?
Yeah, and they're more just general showing where they might put the cars. I don't believe that they would stripe anything that's enclosed.
Well, about where those lines to the right are is about where my runoff is into my property. And the line between them and me is very, very narrow, the property line. So how many vehicles do they think they're gonna have?
I don't think there was a,
So we don't know whether it's 20 or whether we're gonna have more than that?
We do not.
what is the proposed fence setback and what is required?
So we didn't have any measurements for the setback or the fence, but per code for paved areas in the GB district, it's 10 feet. So any of those parking areas would have to be at least 10 feet off of the setback lines.
Okay.
And fences can go right on the property
Yeah, I
line.
was gonna say, I would think you'd
Okay.
want it.
You had brought up stormwater before. There is a note in a proposed condition that if impervious areas were to be increased, stormwater facilities may be required. So the applicant would have to coordinate accordingly. That would be, it would go through Mr. Haynes and Mr. Haynes.
Correct.
Haynes squared, okay. So if there's a stormwater increase due to impervious area, they've gotta go back through the city's engineer, so. So I don't know if there's anything additional that we could put on it. So,
Thank
anything
you.
else? You're very welcome. Anything else?
I would make a couple comments. With regards to the path, simply because of the unique location of this parcel. I don't think it's necessary, but in the future, 'cause, I mean, there are not a lot of sidewalks in Pataskla. And I see the city's intent on, trying to make this a more walking city, but that's my concern there. But I agree that this parcel, is, it's not in a situation where someone is walking from a residence to, another neighborhood or something. With regards to the limitation on the time for cars, I feel it's a little restrictive. I would hate for Mr. Berkey to have the zoning people on his back every 30 days. I feel that 60 days would be more appropriate. And this is coming from my experience in dealing with auto accidents as an attorney and impound lots. And sometimes these investigations last way more than 30 days.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
I understand that there could be stipulations in how long these stay here. That means the planning and zoning office is gonna have to go down every 60 days and say, let me see all your documentation for these cars. That, due to the limited space and the applicant indicating that some cars are gonna be there for an extended period of time, it's not doing him any service to keep them on that property. So instead of 60 days, sending our zoning inspector down to review all their documents, enforcement of this provision would be very difficult, and I think, could carry some issues with that as well. So, it's the board's pleasure, but I think in practice, it may be very difficult to enforce.
I would agree, but then I would also say that citywide, it's not as if you're enforcing the zoning code to a T to every parcel all the time. I would assume you're almost on a response basis or a demand basis, right? You get a complaint, you go out and follow up on it.
I'd say about 75% are based upon complaints.
Scott, would 90 to 100 days alleviate any of that issue, or is it just gonna compound?
From our perspective, I think, because we had I think it was close to 600 violations last year with new subdivisions. There's a multitude that the zoning inspector has to look at. So to go down, say, let me see. So what would happen, we'd go down, however many days is selected, and say, let's see the papers on how long this Buick has been here. Oh, this Buick has been here 60 days, it's been here 61 days. Here's a door hanger. You have 7 days to correct it. Then the applicant would arguably then put it on the truck and drive it to Columbus. We come out in 7 days and the problem's been solved. Typically, our code enforcement process is 24 days, starts with a door hanger. That's where the zoning inspector will go out and try and make initial contact and just explain the situation. Then it's a courtesy letter, another 7 days. Then it's a violation letter, another 10 days. And then if nothing is done at that point, it's mayor's court. So there's usually about 24 days from first contact to when it gets into mayor's court. So we go out and go through the procedure to cite them for a car that's been there too long, but I imagine in 24 days, that car will be gone, and all we've done is generate a lot of paperwork and arguably not very much goodwill with our business community.
I would think most of that would be something that's a public nuisance, that being reported to you, where in this case, it's gonna be within his fence. I don't see
Okay.
it being an issue.
Well, and I would like to make sure that we don't have, I know it's an impound lot, but I would like to make sure that there's no cars stacked on top of one another because of the eyesore. I respect Patricia's understanding. It is a towing, and refuge, and I respect, and I know, generational things change or hands change, so I just wanna protect Pataskla and our citizens to to make sure it just stays like single parking, single layer parking. And I don't know, the only way to kinda control that would be a square footage per car, and it's out of my, professional knowledge to how to calculate or how to control that, the verbiage.
Scott, do you think the concerns we're talking about with the duration and the salvage yard type look, is that addressed in, if we put in the condition of salvage / scrap and vehicle sales to be prohibited? Do you think that, I guess, addresses that?
It should help, it should alleviate that way if it does become an eyesore. We could say, you know, you're violating the provisions of salvage and scrap, that this is no longer towing, but now with, these cars have stayed here
Hmm,
for years and years and years.
okay. While you're looking that up, Mr. Berkey wishes to address the board, correct?
Yeah, Coach.
Please.
When I said 30 days, I was a little anxious. I guess I wanted to say what you folks wanted to hear. There is an occasion where the court would put a hold on a vehicle for a period of time, or put a club on it so it couldn't be driven. Sometimes they will allow us to take that to a owner's residence and put a club on it. And sometimes they want it left on our facility with a club. So there could be an occasion where the court would want the car there over the period of time that I talked about. And they would not want that vehicle taken to another county. So I was wrong. There could be a situation where a car can be there 60 to 90 days with a court order.
Okay.
But understand, I would be highly motivated to move these cars out, because I'd be out of business. If the police department called and wanted a car impounded and I have no place to put it, I'm out of business. So I would be highly motivated to keep this area, keep the cars rolling in and out.
Okay.
And I don't wanna be a challenge to the zoning people to have to come out and bang on my door and hang.
Right, and we're just looking at other opportunities, you know, you're upstanding citizen, you have multi-generations, possibly you would sell this, you know, and we wanna make sure that we have the verbiage in the conditional use correctly.
I understand.
Yeah, nothing against you nor your business at this
Yeah,
time.
well, let's do it right. I understand. That's all I had.
Thank you, sir. Anything else? Okay.
Sir.
Let's move through findings of fact if there's nothing else. This will be findings of fact for CU-19-001. Number 1 is in fact a conditional use as established under the provisions of Title III of the Planning and Zoning Code for the specific zoning district of the parcel or parcels listed on the application.
Yes.
Yes.
Number 2, will it be harmonious with and in accordance with the general objectives or with any specific objective of the city comprehensive plan and or this code?
Yes.
Number 3, will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as to be harmonious in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, and that such use will not change the essential character of the same.
Yes.
Yes.
Number 4, will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses.
Yes.
Number 5, will be served adequately by essential public facilities and services such as highway, streets, police and fire protection, drainage structures, refuse disposal, water and sewer, and schools, or that the persons or agencies responsible for the establishment of the proposed use shall be able to provide adequately any such services.
Yes.
Number 6, will not create an excessive additional requirement of public cost for public facilities and services and will not be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community.
Yes.
Yes.
Number 7, will not involve uses, activities, processes, materials, equipment, and conditions of operations that will be detrimental to any person's property or the general welfare, including, but not limited to, excessive production of traffic, noise, fumes, smoke, glare, odor, potential for explosion, and air or water pollution.
Yes.
Number 8, will have vehicular approaches to the property which shall be so designed as to not create an interference with traffic on surrounding public thoroughfares. If you note in here on page whatever, 3, Public Service Director's comment under number 1 is to have separate entrance and exits, so a one-way. If not, he's to reduce it to one single access point with the appropriate width. So I would say, as long as that condition is included in there, that 8 would be a yes.
Yes.
Number 9, will not result in destruction, loss, or damage of a natural, scenic, or historic feature of major importance.
Yes.
Ms. Paxton, I have yes for all of numbers 1 through 9. Those are the findings of fact for CU 19-001. As to the conditions, I would recommend that based on what the staff has suggested, that number 3 is done away with, number 4 becomes number 3, and then we add a number 4 that says salvage and or scrap and vehicle sales shall be prohibited. That would be our number 4. That being the case, does anybody want, I will entertain a motion to approve, but I would recommend those conditions.
Can I,
If you have others, go ahead.
it says, on section 1291.2, all
Mhm.
off-street parking shall have hard asphalt, so this is kind of, it says, if proposed to be gravel, a variance may be required if the impound, if it's to be expanded, I'm
Mhm.
sorry,
That's all right.
just wanna make sure.
So we have conditions 1 through 4 that would still have to be read. Are there any other thoughts?
No.
I will go ahead and move then to approve a conditional use pursuant to section 1249.0419 of the Pataskala Code for application CU-19-001 with the following conditions. Number 1, the applicant shall obtain all necessary permits from the City of Pataskala and Licking County Building Code Department within 1 year of the date of approval. Number 2, the applicant shall address all comments from planning and zoning staff, city engineer, public service director, and the Licking County Health Department. Number 3, the applicant shall ensure that any lighting shall not constitute a nuisance and it shall in no way impair safe movement of traffic on any street or highway. And finally, number 4, salvage/scrap and vehicle sales shall be prohibited. That's my motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McKittrick. Is there discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick,
Yes.
Ms. Rotovac,
Yes.
Mr. Platt.
Yes. Mr. Berkey, congratulations. Your application's been approved with those 4 conditions. I would suggest you follow up with staff afterwards.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. You're welcome to stay. I won't call you out. You're welcome to stay if you wish. I need a motion to approve the findings of fact for conditional use application CU-18-005 as discussed during the hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Platt,
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick,
Yes.
Ms. Rotovac.
Yes.
And I'm looking for a motion to approve the findings of fact for conditional use application CU-19-001 as discussed in the hearing.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Ms. Rotovac,
Yes.
Mr. Platt,
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick,
Yes.
Mr. Howe.
Yes.
I need a motion to approve the minutes from the February 11, 2019 regular meeting as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hauser, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. McKittrick. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. McKittrick,
Yes.
Mr. Platt,
Yes.
Ms. Rotovac,
Yes.
Mr. Howe.
Yes.
We have number 8, other business, discussion and voting procedures. Do we have an update on that from staff? Any more than we had last time?
We do not, I apologize,
Okay.
it's been a hectic month.
I have no doubt, not a problem. We'll go on to number 9, adjournment. I need a motion to adjourn to the Monday, April 8th, 2019 meeting.
I move.
Mr. McKittrick's moved. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Rodoback. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Platt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Ms. Renneback?
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick?
Yes.
We are adjourned. The time now is 8:20.